Yes, so we are live. We are live. And I want everybody to share because we're going to have such real conversations. If you are on Facebook, you should be able to see our live talk. If you are on Instagram and even on our YouTube channel, you will be able to see our live conversation. But I'm so super excited about this conversation because
Mhm.
it is, if you were a part of our recent discussion, Divorce in Black, we watched the movie and we discussed a lot of different aspects of that movie. Then this is kind of like a piggyback or a continuation of a lot of unanswered things. So please, when you come in, make sure you share. Also, please ask questions. We will be on here answering questions. So make sure that you ask the questions, even if they are, hard questions. If you want to inbox me your question. But we want to make sure we get your questions answered. So listen, I am here with none other than the Tiana Walker. Okay. And she
Hi.
is the author of Married but Single. That title is so deep and rich in and of itself. And so I am so super excited. You guys know I am Tiana Marshall. I am the founder of Tiana's Tea. And we are here to have real talk, real conversations, to deal with some real issues that women struggle with on a day-to-day basis. Those who are married, those who are divorced, those who are single. So we're going to be delving into all of those questions. But for now, I'm going to have Tiana to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. Yes, so as you know, my name is Tiana Walker. I am the author of Married but Single. I also am a business owner of Stitches Glam Experience, which focuses on all things beauty. You can book your consultation for hair and makeup styling. Those services can be provided there, but also a coach has been added. So yeah, this is definitely a move of God. I had no idea that, my life was going to be where it is now. But I promise you, it pays to serve God. It pays to just trust His plan for your life, even when things sometimes go contrary to what you think they should be doing. If we can be honest, sometimes life be life and then things don't make sense. Things don't be math and they don't be adding. But it's a good thing to do it with God because you know you will never fail. So that's a little bit about me.
I am super excited. You already came out with violence, honey, because life be lifing, and the truth is, things happen unexpectedly that we're not ready for. And unfortunately, we haven't been taught how to navigate through the things that we're not ready for. Like we're taught how to navigate through, the expected. So, for example, when you get married, you're taught how to navigate through marriage. You're taught all these things, but nobody teaches you how to navigate through the unexpected, which nobody marries to divorce, right?
Correct.
Nobody marries to divorce, but again, nobody teaches us how to navigate through that through that part of life. And so this is why we're here today, and this is why we're dealing with, the hard questions that Divorce in Black really brought about. And that's why I'm so grateful that Tyler Perry does these movies. And although people have their own opinions and, judgments and complaints about them, the truth is that they bring out reality, the real life situations that we deal with every day. And so divorce is one of those things. So if you have not watched the movie, just a little synopsis, right? A young woman marries into a family, marries a man into a family, and the family is very toxic. It's a very toxic and dysfunctional family. And the family home life that she comes from is a very stable life. In the midst of that, she really, really wants her marriage to work. I think when we were watching it, it was over a span of about 20 years that she was married, because she married him from from a high school. And so she did everything that she can do to make that marriage work. And us looking in, we're like, girl, you need to get out of that marriage. But she was still trying to do everything she could do to make that marriage work. And eventually the inevitable happened and she divorced. She ended up having to divorce this man because he was so toxic. And in the midst of that, a lot of things occurred. Her family got involved, her parents got involved, her friends got involved, and that brought up a lot of questions. So first of all, I want to start with Tiana. Please tell us, your background, tell us your history, what happened, how did you end up writing the book Married but Single? Talk to us a little bit.
Okay, so you guys don't know, I was married for what, 12 years, right? I was married for 12 years, beautiful children. Uh, and I never got married for divorce. Like, you could have never told me that I would be where I am now, but I am so grateful. Let me tell you, because the loss is the win, okay?
Mm,
And
the loss is the win. That's good.
everybody's story may not, be that. But I seen certain things in the beginning, right? But we were young. So I will say that we were young. We got married young. And I was growing individually while we are trying to build a family together. But my mom at the time, before she passed, she was a first lady, right? So I was born and raised in the church. And my mom was the type of person where you're gonna pray about everything. Listen, you're gonna go to God. I mean, if he cheating, you're gonna go to God. If you catch an STD, you're gonna go to God. Like, literally, that's all I
Wow.
knew. It was like beat in my head, like, we gonna pray about everything, right? And I found myself proving my love, right, by how much pain I can tolerate versus me
Ooh.
actually being in a family, or coming from a marriage that was really thriving on real love, right? The real love, not the
Mm,
love that's disrespecting you, the love that's belittling you, the love that's causing you to be like in a depression or oppression, not that type of love, right? But I know
mm,
that that was what I wanted. And so
mhm.
oftentimes, because I didn't want to go through a divorce, right, I started tolerating things that I had no business tolerating. But I'm not going to
Mm,
act like I didn't do anything, because going
mhm,
into my marriage, if I could be honest, if you read my book, uh, I lied about something. I
mhm,
lied
mhm.
about something before we were dating, and he asked me about my past. And I just felt like, excuse my French, nigga, why you asking me about my past? Like, that ain't, I'm being honest, like, that don't
No,
matter,
for
right?
real. Uh-huh.
Right? That didn't matter. And so I felt like, what you reaching for? You know what I'm saying? And so
Mhm.
for a long period of my marriage, that was like his justification for doing a lot of things that he did, right? Because I was
Mm,
dishonest about something. So I learned too, right?
mhm.
But I learned almost at the expense of myself, because I almost
Mm,
lost myself loving someone else, trying to prove to them, oh,
Jesus.
I'm this person, I'm this person. That was my past, and you acting like I cheated on you or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
just the whole manipulation thing, I was a victim of that. The
Uh-huh,
narcissism,
uh-huh.
I was a victim of that. And so I found myself just tolerating things. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes I don't even, like, if I could be honest, I've thought about the things that I went through, because after so much pain, you start suppressing stuff. You try to act like
Yeah.
this stuff didn't happen, right? Because
Yes.
that's your defense mechanism to get through it or whatever. But if you
Mhm.
sit there long enough and you start to think about the things you went through with this person or people, you're like, wow, I really got to forgive myself for what I tolerated, not what you've done, what I
That's good.
allowed you to do. You get what I'm saying?
That's
And
good. Can I
a
stop right? Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because you're saying so many things. You're saying so many things that as women we face. But one of the things at the end of what you just said is that, you know, and I want us to remember this part because in the movie, what happened is her friend had recorded, written down everything that she had tolerated. And there are times when, like you said, we can suppress what we've actually dealt with in order to continue moving forward. But what does that type of suppression do to you? Like pretending that these things don't happen, what does that type of suppression do to you? Because I remember when her mother read all of the things that had happened to her, and even herself, she was shocked to realize how much she had put up with. Hey, you guys. And so, what does that do by suppressing the things that you have put up with?
So let's be real. So, when you looking at a list of things, it's a lot that you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I can't believe I went through all of these things. But in the moment, it's only the one thing that you're focusing on. So
Mm,
in the moment, you're like, oh, I found, for example, I found a girl number in his phone. I found him texting inappropriately. You're only focusing on that. Then
Right,
you
right.
get through that for like 3 months, and then it's something else. So
Mm-hmm.
every time you know, because the Bible talks about forgiving and not, not keeping record, and so
Yes,
you go through
yes.
this thing, right? Let's just be real. You start to try to justify some of your healing processes and some of the disrespect.
Mm,
You try to justify the fact that this man is playing with you. You let's be real. We've done that. We try to make
mm-hmm.
excuses, and so eventually, when you really get real with yourself, and I'm not talking about operating in denial, I'm talking about
Right.
operating in truth. When you're
Yes,
operating in
yes,
truth and you
yes.
start to confront what really is going on with you, right? Because as these
Mm-hmm.
things are piling up, you're realizing, hey, my disposition is very off. Like my response is different. I'm very cutthroat. Because let me tell you, I have
Mm,
went through so much in my marriage that even after my divorce, I was so cutthroat, I didn't even know how to smile because I had the
mm,
question marks concerning everybody. I was like, can I trust you? I don't even want you talking to me in church. Who is you? You could be messing with him, or what conversations you had, and you
mm.
literally start cutting off people. And it's like almost like the roles are different because this is the energy that you almost should have been giving them, but now you're giving it to other people that have not even
Everybody
done
else.
anything.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And
That's
so
good. That's good. Mm-hmm.
and so we go through this thing, and we think that we're suppressing it and it's a right thing until you really explode. Until you explode, and it's like you hit
Mm.
this breaking point and things start to come. Even as children, we went through things and it's like, oh, I forgot I went through that. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you're realizing it when it's so much that, oh my God, I gotta peel the layers off of me because I
Mm,
gotta uncover myself so I can really get covered because the things that I've been carrying, they're too heavy for me. So it's time for me to be real with myself because I gotta identify these core issues because even moving forward, I can't take that. I can't
mm-hmm,
take this
mm-hmm,
baggage that I've been carrying. I can't take, the narcissism, the manipulation, the letdown, the frustration, the disappointment, all of that. Like it's okay to suppress it in that moment, I guess, if that's your way of like trying to get through to the next thing. But
mm-hmm.
eventually you're gonna have to get real with yourself. You're gonna have to get real with yourself and you're gonna have to confront the truth. Like you're just going to have to digest what really is going on. And that's honestly the truth of it.
So that's good because so what I hear you saying is that over a period of time, after you continue to suppress, literally suppress what has happened to you, even without you knowing it, unconsciously, you began to lose a part of who you really are. And you said that for you, it was hard for you to even smile. And so you lost those pieces of you that used to be happy, that used to find joy, that used to smile. In the midst of this relationship, because you had suppressed so much stuff, you had put up with so much stuff, you had justified so much stuff that you lost part of yourself. What now you said that we tolerate you said we tolerate or so many things. What kind of things do you find that we as women actually tolerate that we justify and we make excuses for?
Okay, so people like to say red flags,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the
Uh-huh.
common thing. But it's the things that uh and growing pains I feel will occur in any relationship. But
Mm-hmm.
some
Mm-hmm.
of this stuff be just downright disrespectful. You know what I'm
Disrespectful.
saying?
Uh-huh.
I
Uh-huh.
mean, I'm talking about, he could be dealing with somebody or even allowing a woman to speak to him and not address you. We
Mm-hmm.
we would play that
Mm.
down and be like, oh, okay, it's cool. No, no, no. Because if you're gonna speak to my husband, you're gonna speak to me. Like we're gonna have order. And I think even with us just being Christians, people instantly think that makes us soft. No, I'm
Mm.
saved, but I'm not no punk, and you ain't gonna play with
Right.
me. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
don't play with me. And so even down to just the disrespect. Let's just all types of disrespect, whether it's him
Mm-hmm.
communicating with other people, him, not being mindful of the time he comes home, him,
Mm-hmm.
not talking to you the way he needs to talk to you, especially if you have children. There is a way that a man should address you when you guys are raising children in the same household. They should not see a man talking down to their mom and vice versa. You need to speak to the king in him, regardless of what's going on, especially when you have children, or go behind closed doors, do whatever y'all gonna do. But when you're doing this in front of children, like we're creating toxic environments for our children. And then when they grow up with all these different feelings and not
Yeah.
understanding, then we want to act like, well, you came from a two-parent home, but it was abuse in the home. We don't want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's a lot of things. And then the truth of the matter is we only allow certain things because we really don't feel good about ourselves. We
Mm.
don't really deem ourselves
Mhm.
worthy of the things that we think a man should do because we're settling for everything but that.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
So when you truly know who you are and not seeking a man to validate you as that, then you won't feel bad when you have to turn things down or walk away from situations or
Mhm.
cut off this person or cut off this person. And I'm talking about even friendships. We have to stop tolerating things that go against our principles,
Mm.
regardless of
Absolutely.
the status of the relationship.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's so good because again, like I said, we find ourselves, and we talked about this too, how much do your children play a role in when is enough? Like, um we justify so many things, we put up with so many things, and some of the things that you named, from the disrespect to the, and even, cheating, outright cheating, physical abuse, we justify these things. And I know I have. And let me say this as a side note: we're talking about serial stuff. We're not talking about, you talk to me one time wrong, and I'm ready to walk out the door. We're not talking about, you disrespect me. Some things are communication, some things are let's go get counseling, some things is let's work through these things. But then there's a time when these things continue, and you're the only one working on these things, and that person is not. We're also talking about things that affect you as a woman, things that affect who you are, things that affect you to your core and to your soul, that damage you and destroy you and tear you down, and the relationship is one-sided, where you're willing to
And
go
they're
and get
not.
counseling for these things, but that person is not. That person sees nothing wrong with it, what is happening. And so that is what we're talking about. So something else that you said that I wanted to talk about, and you said, you found yourself proving your love through how much pain you can tolerate. That was powerful, because how many women are in these situations where we're like, let's stand by my man, so when he come to his senses, he can see that I was
He
a
gonna
ride or
know.
die chick.
Yeah, yeah, that's the whole thing. But that's because it's a little girl inside of us,
Uh-huh.
right? That has not grew up. And
Mm.
I was talking to, I'm gonna be honest. I was talking to my sister and I was telling her, I was like, my dad was once like so present in my life. Like I'm talking
Mm-hmm.
about there was nothing that I could have asked for. There's no time I could have called him and he wouldn't have showed up. Then
Mm-hmm.
out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere, he stopped being a dad. I don't even
Mm.
know why. Still don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have answers, but I promise you, I have peace. I love him to death, and I would just pray all is well. But I
Mm-hmm.
found myself growing up seeking for that type of love in a person, right? And so
Mm.
oftentimes the parts that you're missing, you try to find elsewhere. And so when you find things that seems to be compatible or close to what you're looking for, you feel like, oh, okay, like, oh, like he's more good than he is bad, but that bad is
Mm.
really bad,
That's
right? And
mm-hmm.
so you
Mm-hmm.
start tolerating certain things, and let's be real, it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And before you know, you're like, oh yeah, this is nothing like that daddy love that I once was talking about. I mean, he has some of the characteristics, but this is not it. Like growing up, I used to love a thug. I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
That's just those were the type of people I went after because it was a sense of protection for me, right? I'm like, my
Uh-huh,
dad,
I can understand it.
I call my dad, he's coming. My dad gonna show up. He gonna blow the whole river down about me. So then I
Uh-huh.
would go after men that had the same type of aura, right? I'm just being real.
Mm.
Now I'm healed and I don't want that. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for a little street. I'm glad that you've been through something, you've come through some things, but that's just not the way I identify the king that God has for me. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
there's a difference from being unhealed when you're going after things and you're looking for people to fill these voids versus when you're seeking companionship from a whole place. There,
Mm, that's good.
those are two different things, and oftentimes because of where we are, we don't see nothing wrong with what we're getting from the opposite end because we're in an unhealed place.
Mm.
But
So
as
it's
you
not
be,
until you, let me ask you this, Cole. It's not until you begin to heal that you
you can
actually
identify.
realize,
Mhm.
that you actually realize, what you've allowed yourself to suffer through. Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying?
Mhm.
That is very
You
true,
will
because
recognize it from a place of, oh, I went through this but you don't really realize the magnitude of it until you've healed from it. And then you're
Mm-hmm.
like, cause one time, I'm not even gonna lie, I literally had to like say out loud the things I went through and some of the stuff I tolerated, and it like broke my own heart, because it's totally different when you repeat it to someone else versus like
Mm-hmm.
when you self-consciously just think about it or have a moment with God. But if I had to come out and tell you, yo, Tiana, this is what happened,
Mm-hmm.
something about me telling you that brings a spirit of shame. And I'm almost devastated that I stood and stayed after that. Like, you get what I'm saying? So now it's a level of
Yes,
accountability, a level of responsibility, because now I'm actually having a conversation with you and I'm communicating to you the real truth of what I went through and then what I allowed.
that's good. So now let me ask you this question, because this leads to something else. You said that it wasn't, you had to say it out loud because it's different when you hear what you're going through from somebody else. Do you believe that is why sometimes we resist, like friends
Accountability
and people
partners.
that are telling us, we
Absolutely, we
resist?
do. Absolutely,
Yeah,
we do.
yeah.
Because we want the support as long as they're pacifying us and swaddling us
Mm,
and coddling us and telling us what we want to hear. But listen, my circle is so small. Like, if somebody repeats it, I know who said it, right? But my circle is full of accountability partners that
yeah, yeah.
honestly, they're going to hold me accountable. Like, not just me, they're going to hold the parties accountable. And I love that because it's power in community. And oftentimes, this is how you know when you with the wrong person, because you will start to isolate yourself from your community. And all you
Mm,
have is this person. And then when this person break your heart, now you really devastated, because now your community don't even want to deal with you. I've had that
mm,
happen where I literally found myself getting weird with my
mm-hmm,
community for the sake
mm-hmm.
of a relationship, for the sake of my marriage. And then when I sit back, I'm like, the devil, you so sneaky. I almost fell for that. You get what I'm saying? Because he knows that it's power in unity. He knows that if you got three sisters that's gonna
Absolutely.
pray for you, or you got a brother that's gonna real deal pray for you, and he ain't trying to put you on your back. Oh, I know that God is about to open your ears and you're going to hear. I know that God is going to open your eyes and you're going to start to see. But he puts you
Mm-hmm.
in a spirit of isolation where you
Yeah,
can't even see anything. All you see is this person. And this person is filling you
absolutely.
up with lies and all type of stuff. And so now you cloudy.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we always say is that whoever informs you, right, controls or sets your mentality. So a lot of times the enemy looks to isolate you so that no one can penetrate, or insert, another frame of reference or another thought into your mind that is contrary to what they're trying to do in you. So here's the thing, we have to be careful that we don't isolate ourselves, that no matter where we are in our relationship, no matter where we are in our marriage, we have people around us that we can be accountable to for ourselves, that we have people around us that that we can be honest with. And I always say, it is you're in a bad place when you are ashamed or afraid to tell the people that are around you what is happening. Like, you should always have people around you, should always have accountability around you, like you said, that's going to hold the both of you accountable. But when you become ashamed, so ashamed of your situation, I think Tiana left. I'll wait till she come back in. But when you become so ashamed of your situation that you cannot share with your circle, you cannot share with your friends, and I'm talking about your friends, those who hold you accountable, your mentors, whoever it is that holds you accountable. When you cannot share with them what it is that you're going through, then you know that you are in a bad situation, and you need to do some introspection to find out, why am I fearful? What am I ashamed of? A lot of times I find that we're ashamed that the person that we're with don't want to change. Well, that's not a reflection of you. That does not mean you cannot get help just because that person doesn't want to get help. One of the things that we want to do is we want to always make sure, okay, she's back.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's okay. So what we're talking about is the importance of having somebody around us, accountability around us, that we can count on and that we can share what we're going through. And one of the ways that you know you're in trouble is when you're ashamed of what you're going through, so much so to you can't even tell the people that you trust to give you the right information. And I remember there was a time, early on in my marriage, that I didn't tell anybody what we were going through because I was ashamed. I thought that people would think that, you should know better, that, you shouldn't be in this place or what have you. So I kept it to myself. It wasn't until light was shined on the situation that that God began to change the situation. So, I say that if that person don't want to change, that does not negate you getting help, right? That does not negate you seeking accountability. That does, because you never know who God speaks to that's going to give you the answer or give you the information that you need in order to navigate through the difficulties of what you're going through. And so I think that that is vitally important. Something else you said is, you said, I lost myself trying to love him.
I did. Because when you're going through these things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing the patterns of the
Mm-hmm.
disrespect, let's just be real. And you start to think that you're the problem because you start to say, what's wrong with me? Am I
Mm-hmm.
not this? Am I not that? And so because you don't want to go through a divorce, you're focusing on everything else but what really matters, which is you. Not to say that
Mm-hmm.
your marriage don't matter, not to say your kids don't matter, but something has almost came in and just swallowed you up, if I can be
Mm-hmm.
honest.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're doing everything for this person because you're trying to make them see you. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
You want them
Mm.
to see you because
So
they're
bad.
seeing everything else but not seeing you. And so you
Mm-hmm.
start critiquing things about yourself that you know ain't even nothing is wrong with. You may even change your dress code. You may change your hair. You're going to do everything in your power to try to make them be like, "Hey baby, I'm here," but you're not what they want.
I have said this, and this has been so recent because I know women who, if I could, I celebrate women, and I celebrate women. I acknowledge women. There are some women that I know are just bad, right? They are just bad to the bone. They are just drop dead gorgeous. They got businesses. They have everything going for them, and was once married, and you and got cheated on, and was disrespected and was misused. And I said to myself, the last one that I saw this happen to, and I said to myself, what in the world was he thinking? Right? But here's the truth of the matter. If if he has not dealt with who he is, if he hasn't dealt with his own issues, you can cook, you can clean,
You
you
could do
can dress
every
it up, baby. You can cut it off, you can tuck it in, you can do whatever you
And it don't
want.
matter how good you are sexually. Let's be
It
clear.
don't matter, honey. Sparks can be flying out of there. It don't matter. It does not matter. He's gonna do what he's gonna do because it's in his heart to do. And I think that that is the reality that we have to come to, is that, this is not about, me. This is not about, me trying to change someone else. This is about that person desiring change within themselves, right? We each individually have to answer for ourselves, and so many times women lose themselves in relationships. And we're talking about women because we're talking to women, but of course we know that there are men that go through the same thing. There are men who make wrong choices, bad decisions, bad choices, bad decisions. You try to make, a hoe out of a housewife, and it ain't gonna happen. The same way that, we try to make a thug out of a man of God. And I'm sorry, I just hate to bust your bubble, but it ain't so, you know. And so, but so many times women lose themselves, right? Trying to prove themselves to someone who, no matter what you do, it's not going to be good enough.
Because you're not what they want.
This is not what they want. They don't understand marriage. They never understood the covenant of marriage. They don't understand. I always say this, something my dad always said, and that is, if a man don't love God, he can't love you. Well, here is what that really means. That means there is a love that God has for us, right? That is unconditional. It is giving. It is protective. It is covering. It is it runs us down. It chases us down. God's love never ends. It never gives up. There's a love that God has for us. And then he turns around and says, husbands, love your wife like this. So if he don't know what like this is, how is he going to love you like that? So that means that when things start happening, when stuff start falling, when when you ain't doing right, when he looking for satisfaction over here and it ain't coming the way, and he's looking for you to affirm him in who he is, and you may not be in that mood, then anybody can come along up in that space. And our apostle was talking about this today. I think that goes back to just understanding boundaries. If he don't have any boundaries, right? Anybody can just walk up in his space and trespass you and trespass him. And you said this earlier as it pertains to even disrespect. Like somebody could just walk up and be like, hey, and she completely ignoring you over here because he don't have no boundaries.
And he ain't checking her. Come on.
Let's just be real. So again, what that comes back to is that as a woman, you have to know who you are in Christ. You have to be affirmed in your identity, so that as you go through these things, that number one is you're not trying to prove yourself to someone who could care less, because what you said is that's not what they want. That is not what they want. Hey, we're not saying that in another season of their life. That's not, it may not catch up, but right now that's not what they want. So that means that somewhere I got to shift my focus from trying to prove myself. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do, but I'm going to shift my focus from trying to prove something over here so that I don't lose myself in the midst of that proof. And I think that is what we have to remember is we all are individual. We all are individual, and we all have an individual responsibility to God to serve his purpose in our life. And one of the things that I realized is that losing yourself means you lose your purpose. Because how can you know what God has called you to do if you don't even know who you are? And that is what the enemy is trying to do, is strip you of your identity. And he does that a lot of times through covenant relationships. And you said this too. You said, and I said covenant relationships because we can have covenant relationships in friendship. Friendships are covenant.
Mm-hmm.
Friendships are covenant relationships. There are many times that we have friends, we love them, we hold them dear to our heart, and they betray us, and we walk away like, what did I do wrong? And you realize whenever you're in a covenant relationship, when something goes wrong, that is one of the prevailing questions. You don't ask that question about somebody who, you just fly by night and you just like, nah, they got problems, they crazy. But somebody that you're in a covenant relationship with, when things go wrong, that is one of the prevailing questions. What did I do wrong? Because the enemy is after your identity. And so when we're talking about divorce, right? When you especially wrap yourself up in a marriage that is toxic,
Come
a
on.
marriage that is dysfunctional, a marriage that has, all of the signs and symptoms of the inevitable, which is divorce, right? The problem is when you walk away, many times you lose yourself because that was your identity, right? So one of the things that I want to talk about is how do you walk away without losing your identity, because that is what you've known for so long. So for 12 years you were married and your identity was wrapped up in the marriage. People, even our names change. That is how much our identity is connected to our covenant relationship. So how do you navigate through that without feeling like a failure, without feeling like you've lost yourself? Because I think that is another thing that many people fear, is that you fail.
So honestly, I think we get too caught up in opinions.
Uh-huh.
We
Mm-hmm.
get too caught up in opinions, and like for me, like I stated, my mom was the one that was like, pray, 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 right? And I didn't want to be her daughter having a divorce on my
Mm-hmm.
record, and
Mm-hmm.
my family, like, they successful marriages don't really come from my family. Now they're blossoming and flourishing,
Mm.
but at the time, I didn't really have a true example, just being honest, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
And it comes a time where you just have to silence the noise, even your own thoughts that go
Mm.
contrary to what God has promised you. And I stated being healed because as you heal, you really start to realize the levels of
Mhm,
disrespect, the levels of
mhm,
toxicity, the levels of
mhm,
dysfunctions that you were talking about, these cycles that you were going through and allowing yourself to experience over and over again. And
mm,
and once I started to really identify that, I was like,
mhm,
oh yeah, even though this is new for me, this is amazing. I'm scared, but it's amazing because I'd rather be bad by myself
mhm, mhm, mhm,
versus
mhm.
being bad with someone. And here it is, I'm starting
Mm.
to feel like I have to be like protect myself against the person that should be protecting me. Like,
Ooh,
why do I feel like I have
ooh.
to defend myself with someone that should be defending me? Why do I feel like I have
Mm.
to constantly validate myself to someone or whatever who should have already knew who I was? You get what I'm saying? So it's like
Yes,
once
yes.
I started realizing what I was just constantly allowing myself to go through, and then at the time my babies were younger, and I'm
Mm.
like, yeah, you know, my oldest son at the time started to feel away. And I mean, he loves his
Mm.
dad. He
Mhm,
loves his dad.
mhm.
But when I heard my son say out of his mouth, I love him, but I don't want you with him. And
Wow,
that was
wow.
a huge turning point for me because as a mom, you always want to make your children proud. Even when you're
Mhm,
correcting them, it's coming from a place of love. But in this moment, I'm like, God will use a child. He'll use a
mhm,
baby to get
mhm,
something across to
mhm,
you. And
mhm,
at this
mhm,
moment, God was using my son. He didn't even realize that he was speaking prophetically because he's basically saying, you may love him, but he ain't
mhm,
no good for you. You
mhm,
may
mhm.
like the image of what you thought you had with him, but baby, God has something greater. And so when I started to identify like what people thought versus what I really had, I'm like,
Mhm.
listen, it's time to go. Cause y'all like the whole Walker family, you know, got the twins and we come into church, we fly. But baby, I don't like being home with him. He don't like me. I don't like him. Like I be with the kids, he do his own thing. It started to just be like almost like I was starting to feel crazy. Cause after so
Mm.
much stuff that you're allowing, you just as crazy as dumb. If you don't put a stop
Let's
to
be
it.
honest.
Yeah, you if you don't put a stop to it, you're just as bad as dumb. And he may not love me, but I love me. So I had to make a choice. I wasn't waiting for him to choose me anymore. I chose
Mm, that's
myself.
good. That's
And
good.
and so when I chose myself, I didn't care who didn't choose me.
That's
So moving
good.
forward, that's just my posture. I'm choosing me. I'm not waiting to be chosen. I chose me. And I'm just doing things different this time around.
That's good. I chose myself. That's really good. Something you said when you silence the noise, sometimes you have to silence the noise, and that means even silencing your own thoughts. That means even silencing, the people that you think are best for you, giving you the best information, the best advice. That means silencing them. And when we silence ourselves, I think that we can hear clearer from what is God saying about this
Go
situation.
back. You gotta go back. Go
Yeah,
back to
yeah.
what you know. Go back to what
Mhm,
you know.
mhm,
Cause like all of that stuff is cool. Like I could call you Tiana, like, hey babe, let me kick it with you. And whatever
mhm,
you say is cool. But at the end of the day, I gotta follow God. You know what I'm saying? I gotta trust what God is saying. And oftentimes people will keep you stuck in something that's
mhm,
depleting you. They'll keep you stuck in something that's smothering you. And I'm not talking about that good
mm.
smothering. I'm talking about that smothering that's making you feel like you're drowning on land. If you're
Yeah,
not careful, you will lose yourself.
yeah.
Literally. And I
That's
had to
so
just
true.
stop. I had to stop. I was like, listen, I'm sorry. Like, I even called my family. I'm like, listen, I don't want y'all to be embarrassed. I don't want you to be ashamed. But listen, this is what it is. As long as you happy, as long as this, I'm like, yeah, I just wanted y'all to know because I didn't want to be the one that brought like such a negative disposition to my family. But at the same time, I stayed this long for the wrong reasons. Because I've
Mhm,
been not
mhm,
happy. I've been tired. You know what I'm saying? But I didn't feel comfortable walking away me
mhm.
personally until I knew I tried all I was supposed to try.
That's
Now
good.
I have peace. So I mean, listen, we're going on 6 years divorce and I'm talking about I'm good. I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really good because I was good to him. And when you
Yes.
walk away with a clean slate, with a clean conscience, I never cheated on him. It's just, listen, you can't play with me. You can't play with
Mm-hmm.
me because
Uh-huh,
my
uh-huh.
track record is very, you know what I'm saying? My resume is good. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
And so I didn't feel comfortable walking away until I tried everything. I'm talking about I maximized everything that I could maximize. I mean, you talking about prayed, I fast, I had counseling. I mean, whatever it was to do, I tried. But then I was
That's
like, enough
good.
is enough. Enough is enough. I'm
That is
choosing
good.
me.
That's good. I appreciate you saying that. I didn't feel comfortable walking away until I have done everything, until I had done everything that I know that I was supposed to do. We're not talking about women that's irresponsible, that he ain't making you happy, so you just walking away. You just you're just violating your covenant vows. We're talking about the type of toxicity that's damaging you as a person. And sometimes we look at that damage is just physical damage, but there is mental damage. There's a damage that is
Emotional.
doing
Mhm.
to like you said, your children. There are things that at some point you have to not overlook in order to deal with the reality of what is happening. And I think something that you said is that is very important is that when you stop being concerned about what other people thought, what other people like. So many times we're trying to prove, because we live in this world, of course, of social media, of information, and so many times we are trying to prove to other people that this is good, that this looks real good. And then we go home, close up in a situation that we are fearful in, that we are miserable in, that we are frustrated in, that we feel trapped in. And so I think that one of the things that we have to relinquish is the thought of what are other people going to think. And I think one of the ways to do that is when you have done everything that you can do, you have done everything according to the word of God, you have been good and your resume is good, your track record is good. When you walk away, you can walk away with clean hands and a pure heart, knowing that I did not fail. I think we have made things that really are a win, a gain, look like a loss or a failure, right? And so nobody wants to be a loser. Nobody wants to be a failure. So we will stay in the race and stay in the race. And we running, tired, no water. We got no trainer, we are just giving it our all. And if anybody ran track, you understand at some point you got to take a break. At some point, you got to take a break. And then at some point, you realize, okay, I have done all that I can do. It's over. The game is over. The game is over. And
And let's be
so,
clear, they talking anyway. They're people talking about you when you're doing good.
listen,
Like, people will find a reason to talk about you. So whether you're doing good, bad, or indifferent, that ain't gonna stop people from talking.
it really isn't. It really isn't. And I always say this to people who know you, right? You don't have to convince them of anything. That's how you know these are your people, because people who know you, you don't have to convince them of anything. And again, I think that because we live in the world of social media, we're trying to prove, we try to prove to other people who don't even care. They can care less. They're not paying your bills. They're not writing you a check. You, we're trying to prove to people who really don't care that what it looks like is what it is. And the reality is that we're losing ourselves in the midst of relationships, and we're damaging ourselves. And the truth is, what is vitally important is this: that loss affects how you interact with others, meaning the next generation, your children. Now you're bitter and you're resentful and you're angry, and your children are getting it all, right? This is the importance of, knowing who you are and not allowing what is happening, not allowing your relationship to damage you to the place that now, what you're supposed to be reproducing in the next generation, meaning that the character and the likeness of Christ, You said it earlier, like you had lost your smile. Those things that you're supposed to be reproducing in your children, you can no longer reproduce because the you that they're getting is not the you that God intended for you to be, right? And so that is one of those things that we really have to think about, and we really have to consider. Now, something else you said missing parts, but we start missing, we start missing the pieces of ourselves. We start losing those pieces of ourselves, and in these relationships. When do you know that you're losing yourself? How what are the signs that you're actually losing yourself? That's one thing that we don't because we don't look in the mirror. Let's be honest. We don't look in the mirror because we don't want to see what the mirror is showing us. So how do we know that we're losing ourselves? What are those signs?
You start lying to yourself about the things you really like, right? So for
Oh.
example, this is really the truth. I think my sister is watching, so she can contest to this. But growing up, I always loved flowers. Since I was a little girl, I just loved flowers, and flowers is such a big deal to me even now. But when I was married, I kind of acted like I didn't love flowers to avoid the disappointment of not getting them. Right? Like I loved
Wow.
holidays. Holidays to me are major. Like I'm a giver. I would give the shirt off my back. So anytime I can get my family together, it's like the best, you know. But I found myself acting as if I don't really like holidays to avoid the disappointment of a holiday.
Oh, that's so
And so
sad.
no, but this is the things we do, right? We
Oh my
start
gosh.
lying to ourselves about the things we truly like because you're trying to fit in their canvas. You're trying to fit yourself and insert yourself somewhere where you don't belong. And you're trying to basically, if I can be honest, shrink yourself. You're shrinking
Mhm,
yourself to fit the idea of what you think they may want from you. And
mhm.
so when I went through my divorce and our separation process, because in the state of Florida at the time, you had to be separated for a year, woo, woo, woo. And
Really?
yeah, so that's how it was, especially when you have children involved or whatever.
Okay,
So,
okay.
when I was going through my process and I was my separation or whatever, and I'm like getting back to me, right? And I'm realizing one day I think I was in Publix, and I don't know why I started crying. I seen flowers. I'm like, yo, I really love flowers, and now I'm remembering this about me. I knew this from a little
Mm,
girl, but I tried to act like this part of me didn't exist to avoid the disappointment of him not getting them for me. You get what I'm saying? And
that's
so
crazy.
when I started really realizing, I'm like, oh, I love this. Like, I like to
Mhm,
just
mhm,
walk the mall with ice cream. I like to just
mhm,
sit in the car and talk. So much started coming back to me. Like, I take myself out on dates. I don't need you to take me out on a date. It's cute when you do it, but baby, Bookie, I could do this for myself. So
mhm,
when you really start like coming to yourself, healing, and God is really showing you, like, baby girl, this is what you really like. I'm like, yo, I forgot. Like, how did I miss this for so many years? How did I come out of touch with this part of me? Like,
mhm,
this is crazy, you know. And it's something like that. Somebody else's story may be different, but
mhm,
this is what I went through. Like, you really start to lie to
mhm,
yourself about the
mhm.
things you don't like or do like to protect other people's feelings. And you know you're in
That's
something
good.
bad when you feel bad for having feelings. You start feeling bad because you want to
Mm,
protect someone else's feelings over your own. And it's like
mm.
that's a dangerous thing when you can't even feel safe to communicate how you truly feel. And so
Jesus.
when you can't communicate how you really feel, it becomes all about them. Because in most cases, let's be real, anytime a woman really communicates, it's considered to be confrontational. So you feel like, well, let me just be quiet because if I say something, you think I'm nagging, you think I'm doing this. But it's like, homie, I just want to kick it with you. I don't like when you do that. Like, I don't like when you
Mhm.
talk to me like that. I like this. I want flowers twice a week. I like them at least once every 2 weeks. You get what I'm saying? But you start to feel bad for just expressing your true feelings.
That's good. I think that's so good because there's a difference between lying to ourselves and compromise. Right? In marriage, we know that, sometimes we may have to compromise. Maybe we ain't in the stage where, we might be going through financial issues. So we can't buy this and we can't give this and we can't do these things like we normally do. But because I know it's important to you, I may not can do it on the scale and the level that you want to, but I'm going to acknowledge it. That is what compromise looks like, is that I'm not going to diminish you or make you feel like what you like or what you want to do is not important important to you and not important. And if it's important to you in a marriage, it should be important to me. But when we start lying to ourselves because we know there's no way that this person is concerned about what we like, they can care less about what we like, or what we want, then that is an indication that you're losing yourself, because eventually you'll continue to lie. You'll lie to yourself so much so you convince yourself that this is true, that it's true. And that is again an indication that you're
Because you're
losing
not
yourself.
yourself. This person that
Mm,
you're, what I'm saying, you're not being your true self. So I'm being this person, but it's not really Tiana. Because the real Tiana is like a social butterfly. Like, I want to have a good time. Like, listen, whatever you want to do, I'm down, respectfully,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
But that wasn't who I was.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I
That's
lost
so good.
myself. I definitely just lost myself.
That's so good. Like I said, so many women, I think that you said protect, you start protecting their feelings in order to, and while protecting their feelings, you are neglecting your own. You're neglecting your own needs in order to meet their needs. And I think that those are all like, you know, signs and symptoms that there is something wrong here. The equilibrium is off here in this situation, and either we're going to we're going to have a conversation about this, or we're going to continue to neglect until this thing just falls apart. And again, you cannot make it, is not your responsibility. What I really want women to understand, because we will labor trying to make someone, conform to who we desire them to be, even conform to who we know they are. There are sometimes you see the potential, in that man, but until he sees the potential in himself, until he understands who he is, who God created him to be, you cannot labor, you cannot make him, you cannot change him. And so I think that is one of the things, again, that we have to recognize when we're doing that. When you are putting so much effort into trying to change somebody, that ain't
Potential is not a
changing.
guarantee, though. Potential is not a guarantee.
It is
A
not
lot
a
of, like,
guarantee.
I have potential to be a lot of things, but if I don't tap into
I
that,
gotta tell you,
yeah, if I don't
it is.
tap into that, then I just have potential. And many people
Yes.
have died with potential. Many
Listen,
people are not here anymore, but they had potential. So potential stages are not enough.
please say that again for the people, because I think that there's this school of thought. There's this school of thought where we can build a man. We can, he got potential, and as long as the potential there, then we can build a man. Nobody but God, nobody but God can take the clay, and make it into, what he wants it to be. Nobody, and we're talking about human beings, right? We started out as clay, and he began to mold and make us into who he desired for us to be. You're not God. So, that is not, although you see the potential there, if they don't tap into that potential, then that's not going to change them. And so all this time you hold on to what they potentially could have been, while you are in reality losing yourself and dying to yourself. So I think that is something that we have to understand. Now, so here's another question. And again, we are piggybacking on things from Divorce in Black, and we are looking at Tiana Walker's life as she shares it with her, and what she's been through, and help us navigate through these things. Healing. Let's say this, how do you heal? What does healing look like? Let me make a two-part question, right? How do you heal? What does healing look like? And then, when do you know you are healed? Because if you remember in the movie Divorce in Black, okay, she got out of the relationship. So she went through her divorce, and divorce don't mean you healed. Please understand, divorce does not mean you're healed, right? But she got out of the relationship, and before she got out of the relationship, she actually started engaging with somebody else, and he was a great man. He was a good man, and he probably was what she desired in her marriage. So, of course, everybody was, oh yeah, she deserved this good man, blah 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 blah. And then In the end, she murdered, which was an indication that she wasn't healed. She was not healed. And the truth be told is the anger and the rage that she had within her, could have bled on anybody, right? So what does healing look like? Because okay, let's look at the reality. She left for a week and she spent some time with her mom and her dad. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
she left for a week. She spent some time with her mom and her dad, and then she came back. So she processed the reality of this over. Divorce is inevitable. So she processed that, but that does not mean that she healed from all the things that he did from her. And so many times we see women jump back into a relationship or jump back into another marriage because again, divorce doesn't mean you fail, right? It does not mean that you're not going to make a good wife. It does not mean that that you're not going to make a great companion for somebody. It does not mean that you didn't want to be married. So because women know that they are so good and they make a good wife and they really love marriage, damn, they end up, in less than a year of a divorce, they end back up in a marriage. And so the question is, what does healing look like, and how do you know you've healed?
Okay, this is good. So the first question was, you asked me, this is like a part three question. So I wrote them down. That's what y'all saw me doing. I wasn't
Yes.
being disrespectful. Okay, the first question was, how do you heal? Right. And I want to say this, before you can even start your healing process, you have to identify that parts of you are broken. You have
Jesus.
to be able to identify that I don't have it all the way together. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. And I need you guys to understand that it's okay to not be okay. I don't know why it's almost like a wardrobe of shame to tell somebody, hey, I'm not okay today. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you won't be okay, and that's okay. And I'm gonna be
Mm-hmm.
honest, I probably had plenty of those days because I just didn't understand. Even though I was the one to initiate my divorce, I knew I was doing what God called me to do. I knew I was doing what he told me to do. But still there were days where I just wasn't okay. Okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to also say, what does healing look like? Healing looks ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Healing looks ugly. Have you ever got a big bruise on your knee, and as it's healing, you see sometimes pus, you see different colors, you see different bruises? I want to tell you that healing is not pretty. Healing is not going to look like a wedding cake. It's not going to look like cute decorated cookies. It's not going to look like a pretty presentation. Sometimes it's going to mean, hey, you crying on your floor until you feel different because you're praying,
Mm-hmm.
and the only person that understands the groan of your mouth is God. Sometimes it is, baby, I don't even know how I'm gonna make it, but I know I gotta go through this process. Let's just be real. Healing is ugly. Healing is ugly. And I want to also preface it by saying healing will be a continual thing. It won't stop.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
going to always find yourself healing from something. And so if
Mm-hmm.
you think that you're going to have it all the way together by the time another man comes along, baby girl, no. Right? Because the Bible say, when I deliver you, you go back and strengthen your brother, right? Which
Uh-huh.
means you're going to overcome some things for you to go back and to share the story, etc. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
going to be times where you won't even realize that maybe there was residue of something until you
Mm-hmm.
involve yourself with another situation.
Mm-hmm.
You might
Mm-hmm.
experience a trauma, you may experience a trigger, and that's okay. Don't be alarmed, okay? But how you know you're really healed is when you're around that thing that tried to destroy you and it has no
Mm-hmm.
power over you.
Jesus, that's good.
So
That's
now
good.
me and my ex-husband are not together. And when I tell you I've seen him, not recently, but when the last time I did see him, I can interact with him and not feel nothing in my heart. Nothing.
Mm.
Not nothing. There was a time where I was like, you already know how I go. Don't play with me. I can look at him and just be like, what up? Like legit, like you a homie.
Uh-huh.
Respectfully, you're the father of my children. I don't wish evil upon you, but you don't even have the control over me that you once had.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so now I'm looking at how I could have responded versus
Mm-hmm.
how I did respond. And then the scripture I want to use where God talks about he'll vindicate you. So now I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at how God has vindicated me because I chose to follow him when I could have used my platform I could have used my
Let's be
platform, y'all.
real.
I could have used my platform to expose so many people, so many things, but I chose to follow God. And with me following him, let's be honest, sometimes I think we think that because we're following God that it's going to be easy. The Bible says it was good that I was afflicted.
It
Okay?
was
You're
good.
going to go through some things even for the sake of God. Even in the name of God, you're going to go through. But
Yeah.
the advantage is you're going to come out on top because of God. So when you go through it with God, just know that vengeance, let me tell you, let me just tell you, you're going to have the victory. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
over the very
Mm-hmm.
thing that tried to swallow you up, over the very enemies that set traps for you, will be the very thing that destroys them. So this is how healing looks. But there will always be a time where you're like, listen, I got to go back on my knees. I got to talk to God
Yeah.
because something just feels a little off today. I didn't
Yeah.
like how they
Yeah.
handle me. And this is not just going to be in romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may find yourself being triggered by the way somebody talked to you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Just if
Mm-hmm.
you feel like somebody's trying to little girl you or little boy you, you like, what? Like, who you talking to? Like, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, God, nah, you're gonna have to humble me. You're gonna have to take this out of me. Whatever this is that got me responding like this is not
Yeah.
me. This is not
Yeah.
how I want to respond. God, take that away from me. So it won't never stop. But you have to be willing to admit that there is something wrong.
Oh, that's good. That is so good. We always say this. You cannot conquer what you're not willing to confront, and you cannot confront what you're not willing to admit.
Come
Like
on.
again, it goes back to lying to ourselves. Like you have to be, healing cannot begin where truth is not the foundation of it. The beginning of healing starts where truth is revealed. Truth is, how did I get here? What happened to me? What was the results of me even being here? What responses has come out of me being where I am. One of the things that we talked about this today too, and that is soft girl. Being a soft girl, versus a hard girl. And of course, Apostle was like, don't no man want no thug. You know, we're supposed to be a soft girl. But one of the things that I realized, even a soft girl is a posture, right? It is really a posture. It's not about what we wear and all these things, but it is a posture. It is hard to posture yourself as a soft girl when you practice being in defense mode for
All
so
your life.
long.
Come on. Come on.
It is hard to be, a soft girl, when you've been so used to being on the offense, or you've been so used to being the responsible person, or you've been so used to, carrying and handling the things that God never intended for you to carry or you to handle. So one of the things that we have to admit, because we have given into the, don't try me, blah, 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 blah. And we've given into that, not even realizing that that was the enemy's trap to strip you of the identity that God gave you. Soft girl is a posture. And so now, even in realizing that, hey, I don't feel real soft right now. I feel on the edge. I feel like, I want to do something. We got to recognize, no, that's not part of your Christ given identity. And so I need to heal, even in that. But because we have, and we have to be so careful. I think I go back to when you said silence the noise. We have to be so careful that we don't allow culture, right, to dictate to us who we are supposed to be. You got to silence the noise and hear from God. God, who am I supposed to be? What do you say I'm supposed to be like? Where is, and ask these questions. When you see those triggers, when you see those red flags, like, nah, that wasn't just me. Because sometimes we'll be like, girl, that's just how I am. That's how I am. That's just what I do. But no, ask yourself, be real with yourself. Why did you respond like that? What was there that you ignoring? Because if you don't deal with it now, you're going to deal
You're
with it
going to
later, and it's
and you're
going
gonna
to
run
be
somebody
worse.
good away. Yes.
Yes, we say this, you're going to bleed on somebody that did not cut you. And we always say that, and that's become like so cliche or what have you. But it is the reality of an unhealed heart. an unhealed heart, the Bible says that, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh, right? That means that what comes out of our mouth will tell us the condition of our heart, right? It also says that the issues of life flow out of our heart. So we understand that one of the reasons that the enemy is after our heart and he's always trying to offend us, right, is because he knows that everything is going to flow from that heart. And if you haven't dealt with that, eventually you're going to meet somebody that touched something and they're going to trigger something, and then all your issues going to flow up. All your issues going to come up and they're going to
That's
be,
real. Mm-hmm.
yeah, and they're going, you're going to have a problem because people going to look at you like, but the reality is that, no, you just never healed. And we got to make sure that we don't allow people to rush our healing process. People will rush your healing process, just like we talk about, and I think you said this earlier. You said that for some reason, it has become like a robe of shame to say it's not okay, right? People will rush your healing process because you're still healing. They're like, what's taking you so long to heal? Just kind of like, it's just like the grieving process. People will try to rush you through any process that they feel like it's too long.
Especially
And
if you're in church. Like if you're in church and let you not have a position, okay? They're gonna be like, oh, you're a woman of God. You're on this auxiliary. You're on, and you really feel bad for having moments. You feel
yes,
bad for coming to church and being like, listen, I don't want to operate today. I need to sit down until I'm okay. Like, that's okay.
when I
That
tell
is
you,
okay.
y'all better let people tell you that it ain't okay, because I have seen some women of God explode publicly, right? Because we didn't know how to deal with the I'm not good. No, I'm not going to sing today. No, I'm not going to preach today. No, I'm not going, I'm not going to do this. And so, again, we have to be so careful that we don't allow people to rush us into something. Because remember, this is something I realized too this week, and that is because God made a spectacle of the enemy, he wants to make a spectacle of you. And so, what better way to do that is publicly when you haven't healed, and then all of a sudden somebody triggers something, and now he can expose what's really in your heart, right? And so we have to be so careful to know that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. There is a greater battle behind what we see, and this is why we always have to, make sure that we're staying in check with God as to where we are. So I think that is very important. How do you heal? What does real healing look like? Because if not, we'll find ourselves, moving from one relationship to another relationship. And let me say this: a new marriage is not going to heal the pain of an old marriage. Come on. A new relationship is not going to heal or cover up, the damage that was done in that previous relationship. Just because you feel like you good, and you can navigate through something new right now where you are, does not mean, if you have not gone through that healing process, that the same thing, because where you are, you are. And if you don't heal, you're going to see with the same blinded eyes. You're going to miss the same red flags. Because if we don't know ourselves, let me tell you something: the enemy knows.
He knows.
He has
He
watched your
knows.
pattern.
He
He has
knows.
watched your pattern, baby. He know what you like. He know how you like them to smell. He know how you like them to look. He know how you like them to sound. He knows that. Oh, that's one thing. The other thing is we talk so much. We will tell it all. We'll tell you everything that we like. And then when they do it, then we be like, oh my God, how did he know I like this? Because you told him. You told him. There was no secret. So again, we have to make sure that we heal. Next question is, how do you safeguard yourself against this type of damage, even while you're in relationship, even while you're in a damaging marriage? Is there a way to safeguard your heart against being damaged? Like, there are some women that are in a midst of a relationship, and you said that you did everything that you could do until you had done everything that you knew that God wanted you to do. You did not feel like feel not feel good about leaving. So until God gave you that release. But how do you keep yourself from being damaged while you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing? The Bible says, be not weary in well doing, right? How do we not grow weary? How do we not experience, this type of damage while we're still trying to do good?
I think it's really no way to avoid the pain that you're going to feel regardless, right? But the
That's good.
scripture says, guard your heart, right? And
Hmm.
so when you make that conscious decision, I'm not talking about an emotional decision. The one, the emotional one is when one day you want to leave, the next day you want to stay.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
once you make that serious decision that, God, this is what I'm really going to do, you're going to have to do what you have to do by any means necessary. And like you stated earlier, walking away with your hands clean and your heart clean, right?
Hmm.
And so sometimes that means that you won't get the last word. Sometimes that means when you could address something, you're not going to be able to. Why? Because you're preparing yourself for a smooth transition. And even as you're on a
Hmm.
job and you're waiting to get promoted out, right, to another position, you don't want to leave the old job bad because they have to sign off on some stuff, right? So
Right.
it's just a matter of choosing your battles, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
the devil will paint the picture. Let's be real, because I had this happen, where I thought that my ex was doing better than me. I thought that the life he chose with these
Mm.
people, this person, it looked like, listen, that they had it all figured out. And so naturally, you're going to feel like you need to retaliate because who do you think you playing with, right? Like, I'm sitting here raising the kids. I'm the one that got to stretch my coins. You taking trips. Y'all doing all type of stuff. Y'all posting flicks. Baby, who do you think you playing with, right?
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Naturally, you feel like you need to defend yourself. But
Mm.
I promise you, no lie. I promise you. One day at the time, I was staying in an apartment, me and my children.
Mhm.
And I had this encounter with God. I think they went to school, and I literally just fell to my knees in my living room and I cried. I said, God, it's you and me now. I
Mhm.
said, and
Mhm.
whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do. And God began to tell me the steps. And I promise you, thinking back now, I really can't even say that I would have done it any other way. But in the
Mm.
moment, I felt like it was a punishment because I'm like, God, you know
That's
what
good.
this person has done. You know what they are doing, but you're telling me to walk away and not say anything. You're telling me to show love. You're telling me not to expose. You're telling me not to respond a certain way when I have every reason to defend myself. And it was even a case where they went to social media about me. I didn't even respond. The Holy Spirit said, shut up. But you want me to shut up. But it's like they're jugging at me. They're provoking me, but you're telling me to be quiet. You're telling me to hush. You're telling me not to say something. So what I'm telling you is you have to trust God. And whatever it is that he is challenging you to do, whatever
Mm.
it is he is instructing you to do, whatever it is he is giving you leadership on, and he's saying, hey, do it this way, that way, there is protection in his will. There is so much
That's good.
protection in his will. And so I'm saying that to say things will always look like they're better on the opposite end.
Mhm.
That's the devil's job, to make you feel like you're losing. It's his job to make you feel like everybody else is doing better than you. It's his
Mm.
job to make you feel like you're the one that took a major loss. When in
Mhm.
reality, like I stated, the loss was the win. I'm doing better now by myself than I was ever doing when I was with him. The loss
Mm.
was the win. But you have to be in a place with God that you say, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how hard it gets, I'm going to trust you even when I cannot trace you. Because it's easy to trust him when you see what he's doing. But can you
Jesus.
trust him when you don't know if things are really going to work in your benefit, but you know that that's what he said? Sometimes you don't see. You cannot see. It's impossible to see because the dots are not connecting, the T's are not being crossed. But I'm telling you, God is a king orchestrator. He has a
Mm.
way of working the good and the bad out for you. You have to trust him. You have to trust him.
Woo. That was so good. That was so good because the question was, how do you safeguard your heart? And what you said was, when you are in the will of God, then God will safeguard your heart. God will protect. He will have you doing things that look like you're losing on this end. And when you were talking, it reminded me of Jesus and the crucifixion. It looked like he was losing. It looked like we had lost. When he was nailed to the cross, it looked like it was over. But what we did not know is that all the time it looked like he was losing, God was orchestrating things and we was really winning. And that is what I hear you saying, is that there are times when God will have you doing things and making moves. He'll have you be quiet, when you want to say stuff, and he'll have you turn the other cheek when you want to, when you don't feel like turning the other cheek, and he'll have you doing things, when everybody else is over here acting a fool, and you have the same opportunity, but God won't allow you to move that way. That is because God is safeguarding your heart. That is
And
because
if
God is protecting you. That is because God is keeping you from getting bitter. He's keeping you from being in resentment. He's teaching you his ways. Because remember that when it's all said and done, when it's over, you still have to walk away and do what God called you to do. You still have to walk away and do, and operate in your purpose. And you can't do that when you're acting the same way they're acting, when you're over here trying to get revenge, when you're over here stuck, in resentment and looking at all the stuff that they got going on. Go ahead, because I know it's on you.
because I have to say this, there are people that's assigned to you. There
Yes.
are people that's watching you. There are people that know your whole story. They know what you're doing. They know what he doing. They know what she doing, right? And they
Mhm.
are waiting for your response. They
Jesus.
are waiting to see how you're going to handle it. They are waiting to see if you're going to retaliate. Let me tell you, I didn't even know who my supporters were until I
Mhm.
didn't respond. When
Wow.
God put me in a
Wow.
position where I had every reason to respond, but I didn't respond, I did not know the people that I was impacting. I didn't know
Mm.
my real influence until I really had to live this thing out. I'm not talking about people that post stuff and they're not living like that,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because there's a cost for the oil. Okay,
Woo, say that.
it costs to serve God. It costs to do it his
Jesus.
way. It costs to do his will. So there were times where I'm like, I would get messages and they're like, yo, I know you have every reason to say da 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 da, but I promise you, like, you just kept me because you didn't. And I'm like, y'all, it's like y'all celebrating something that is like the worst time of my life, but y'all celebrating. But then I had to look at it from a fresh perspective, like, God, you're still in this broken place. You're allowing me to reach somebody that
Mm.
did not even know if they had the strength to come out of something, or did not even
Jesus.
know if they were going to be able to come out of something. So what I'm saying is, even in your worst, there is a community of people that is watching and waiting for you to respond. And it's
Mm.
your job to respond right. It's your job. That's your mandate. You have to respond right. It does not matter who wronged you. It don't matter what lie they told on you. It don't matter what people are saying about you. You have to respond right. I'm telling you, the blessing is in your response.
This is so good. This is so good, because I believe that we look at influence as, how many likes we get, how many, this we get and how many of that we get. But true influence is given when God can trust you, with those who need what you have the ability to produce, because we all have the ability within us to produce it, but we all don't produce it, right? And so God knows that when you have the ability to produce it and you produce it, now I can trust you with this level of influence. Now you're not going to make my name look bad. Now you're not going to make us shame, because it's all about, we get out here and we get hurt, baby, and we forget all about God. We forget all about, our reflection. We get all about our representation. And, no, this is me defending me. But the truth is that when you are a child of God, you are always representing God. And so you're going to represent him properly, correctly to somebody, or incorrectly to somebody. And so, like you said, there are always people waiting to see how you're going to respond. And the crazy thing is that if the enemy can get you to believe that you look a certain way when you respond this way, then we are less likely to respond the way that God wants us to respond. The Bible says he was led like a sheep to slaughter, meaning he didn't say a word, right? If you would have heard, if we it could have been us, right? Because people would have been like, what? Why she ain't saying nothing? Why she ain't protecting herself? Why she ain't defending herself? Why she let them do this? Why she let them do this? And we would have blown the whole thing. We would have
Oh,
blown
I
the
gotta say this.
We would have blown the
This
whole thing.
this is so true. This is like, oh God, this is so good. This is a real story. Like, I'm not making this up. This is real. There was somebody that was involved in all the stuff I went through. I'll never forget this. And I felt some type of way. I really did. And I didn't realize how much I grew and have grown until I received the inbox from them, right? And in so many words, they was like, "Can you pray for me?" And I'm like, here it is, the same person, you tried to make mockery of, you tried to play on me,
Mm,
you tried to play in my face and da 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 da. But now you're asking me, right? You're asking me to pray for you. And I could have took that moment and been like, "Oh, I ain't doing it. Who do you think you are? Da 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 da." But why not me?
mm.
Why not God pick me? Because baby, when I tell you I pray as if my life depended on it because that's when I knew I was
Jesus.
healed. That person that I once felt the way about, the road changed and they needed me. And I thank God that he touched my heart in such a way that I was able to do it in spirit and in truth. Not because,
Jesus.
oh, I'm going to pray for you because I need some type of credit or, oh, now you need me type of vibe. Because that's what we do. When we feel like God using us, we get
Yeah,
cocky, we
yeah.
get arrogant. Baby, when I tell you I was so humble because I thank
Mm,
God that the person I could have been and the person that the devil wanted me to be, I thank God that I overtook all of that. You get what I'm
mm,
saying? And I was in a position where I had the opportunity to love my enemy. I was in a position to carry my enemy through when they were a part of the reason that I had to, what I'm saying, go through some of the things that I had to
mhm,
go
mhm,
through. You
mhm.
didn't have my back like I needed to have yours in the end, but that's not even what it's about because God is
Mm-mm.
continuously giving grace to me. He's continuously showing me mercy. So why not? Why not extend that to someone else?
That's good. That is the evidence. Let's just be real. That is the evidence of a healed heart. The evidence of you being healed is not you avoiding that person, you abstaining from conversation with that person because at this point you don't know how you're going to respond if you actually interacted with them. So just by avoiding that person, avoiding the conversation, going around and not running into that person does not indicate you're healed. The true evidence of healing, and this is so funny because Apostle just said this today, is if God calls on you to do something for that person, if that person calls you up and say, "Hey, can we go to lunch? I need to talk to you." How are you going to respond to that? Your response to that is an indication of you being healed. Because if God cannot still use you to operate, right, to represent Him, to still pray for a person, to cover a person that is in need, because remember, we weren't always where we are, right? And the Bible says that when we didn't know love, He gave us love, right?
Come
And
on.
so, who are we to judge where a person is? We never know. They might have needed to see what they saw so that they can see God's grace. How do you know that you are not an example of God's extended grace to them,
Come
right?
on.
Because Jesus could have responded to Judas, right? But he didn't, because Judas will never be able to say that God didn't give me the grace to repent. So, how do you know that you are not an extension of God's grace and God is using you to prove to that person that I still love you and there's still an opportunity to repent from this and there's still, an opportunity for you to change? So, the indication that you are healed is how do you respond when the person that hurt you is in need of you? Ooh. I always think about that when I think about the Medea movie and I think about the Diary of a Mad Black Woman. And when she had the opportunity to retaliate, baby, she retaliated, right? Until God did something in her heart, right? That allowed her to see where she really was. Because the truth is that retaliation is not really about them. It is about what's operating in us
Mm-hmm.
that we have not released. It is about the hurt and the pain that has entered into our heart and now manifesting in our need to retaliate, to get vengeance, and whatever that looks like, whatever retaliation or vengeance to you looks like, That is really what it is exposing. It's really exposing what's in your heart. So when God says don't say this, when God says don't go there, when God says don't do this, the question, how do you safeguard your heart? Do what God said do. Do what God said do, because he's not going to go against his word. He's not going to go against who his character, right? In order to get you out of character on your own behalf. It's a contradiction of who God is. Vengeance is mine. So he's not going to have you, to operate in vengeance and retaliation, which is contrary to what he said to you, that you don't have to get vengeance because vengeance is mine. I will vindicate you, says the Lord. And I think that is one of the things going back to, true healing. How do we safeguard our heart? Because that is one of the things that I want to get out of this, is that you can walk away from a situation and still be whole. You can walk away from a situation and not feel like you failed, and not feel like like it's over for you, because a lot of times we want to make people feel like you can't be used. God can no longer use you because you done did this and you done did that. But I want women to know that it is not God's will. It is not God's will for you to walk away from a situation just utterly destroyed.
And
It is.
broken crayons still color.
It's still colors. It's, baby, they color even better. All right, because it's been through some things. Now it's conformed to how you color. So the truth is that you can still be used by God greatly, and to even greater measures, because now you've experienced something at a whole nother level. So now you can be used in another arena. But the key to it is you've got to be healed. There are too many people that have not healed for real, that are trying to pour into other people, and poisoning people with a heart that has not been healed. And that is something that that we don't want to see. Tiana, I want to talk about, before we leave this conversation, I want to talk about something that we talked about, and it is your book title. And this gonna be a whole other conversation. I already know, but I just want to embark upon it a little bit, because I think it does. I think we don't talk about this enough. And this is not even, I'm not talking about, I'm not even talking about, this happens in marriages that, it ain't no infidelity going on. There's no, none of this going on or what have you. But there is no relationship. So you're married, but in that marriage, let's be honest, you are single. You talking to you having conversation with yourself, you sleeping with yourself, honey. You all by yourself. What is that about? Let's talk about
Okay. Listen, this is so deep. So it's a true thing, right? And I was like, God, you sure? Like, you want to use something that I'm ashamed about, like for a book?
it.
Like, what are you doing, right? But it's so common, like you said, and it's still happening. But
Mhm.
literally, I was married, and I'm not gonna lie, it was like 85, 90% of the time was me and the babies. And they would do
Mhm.
whatever they were doing, right? And at first it started off like me being so understanding, right? And I
Mhm.
think it
Mhm.
ends up turning into overly understanding. So you start
Mhm.
your understanding turns, allows them to be disrespectful. Your
Yeah.
understanding gives them too much freedom
Yeah.
to do whatever they want to do, and they don't have to be accountable. And so I was like, this is crazy. Like, I mean, everything is just me and the kids, me and the kids. And so when I finally decided, and I made the choice to follow through with the divorce, I'm like,
Mhm.
why am I acting like this is new for me? I've been basically living this life. Like, I've been, I'm being honest. What
Yeah.
I
No,
was
that's
afraid of
real.
was
That is
making it
real.
making it official. Really, it
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
the whole title of the, listen, you're going your way, I'm going my way. But I was living like this for years. Anybody would tell you they saw me, they saw the kids. Like, only
Mhm.
time you probably would really see us was if you went to our church or
Mhm.
something like that. Sunday we'll go to eat or something like that. But I'm talking about during the week, me and the kids. So much responsibility was on me. And I'm like, it's cool, But then I found myself becoming hard, right? Because now I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling like a bulldog. I can make all of these decisions because I'm bringing in the money. Not saying you wasn't bringing in it, but I'm making executive choices because I feel like it's me and the kids. Like I don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I running stuff by you? Like this ain't a, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just being honest. So he gave me too much time to myself with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started moving like a single mom in a marriage because I'm always going to make sure my babies are good. I'm always going to make sure I'm good. I'm not saying I'm not going to see about you, but you really just letting me do what I want to do. And it was really no togetherness. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, we see this happening. We really made this normal, and this is so abnormal. Like we
Mm-hmm.
think it's okay to always see one with the children, or you see the wife and you see the husband. Like, no, I need to see y'all together. I
Yeah.
need to see
Yeah.
y'all together. And I'm not saying it's about, keeping up with the image, but this should
Mm-hmm.
really be
Mm-hmm.
your lifestyle. If you're going to be married, it needs to be some type of unity. It needs to be some
Right.
type of togetherness. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I tell you, I was so ashamed at first because I'm like, this is crazy. I always got the kids. That used to be my speech. I always got the kids. I'm doing this. I'm doing that, and I found myself getting burnt out. I
Mm-hmm.
found
Mm-hmm.
myself getting burnt out, tired, exhausted because I'm like, listen, and when you start facing real situations, it makes you
Mm-hmm.
wake up a lot quicker. It
Mm-hmm.
does. It's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
when you give birth to a child, especially if it's your first child, you're like, oh no, I got to go home and clean up. I need to do certain things. My baby can't go over this person's house. It's something that comes over you that like awakens you, right? And it brings you
Mm-hmm.
to a sense of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And I started realizing like, hey, this ain't normal, Tiana.
Yeah.
Like you're being so overly understanding that you're allowing him to disrespect you. You're allowing
Mm-hmm.
him to mess around. You're giving him the space to have a double life. No, 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 not me.
Wow.
No,
Wow.
no. And
Wow.
so it's the things, if you read the book, it just shows you how to identify the
Wow.
signs. It shows you how to
Yeah.
understand what's not being said because oftentimes I think we wait for things to be said when we already know the answer, right? And we do
Mm-hmm.
that very bad. Like we do that a lot. Like, oh, I'm waiting for him to say this. No, use that discernment that God gave you. Work that because there's a reason why he gave it to you. Like some things don't need to be said because you already know. And don't be afraid to do temperature checks, even if you're in a successful relationship, because what worked last week may not work this week. Make sure that both parties are okay. Make sure,
Yeah.
hey, is there something that I need to change? I know we were doing this for the first 6 years. Do you need more of me? Do you need less of me? And it's nothing wrong with that. I think we get caught up in the, oh, I've been doing it this way. This is just who I am, like you stated earlier. And that doesn't deem it to be right. That doesn't deem it to be right. And sometimes things change, people change, statuses change, access
Mm-hmm.
change, and you need to be able to move accordingly. You need to be able to navigate through those changes and understand, hey, if I need to fall back a little bit, if I need to apply a little bit more pressure, be sensitive to that. Be sensitive
That's
to that.
good. That is good. Like I said, that's a whole conversation. Like that's like I think that one of the things that you said is that what keeps us from really having that conversation is honestly shame, because nobody wants to admit that they're married but living single in the marriage. Because one of the things is that, again, as we were talking earlier, we always ask the question, what's wrong with me? Like, why
Mm-hmm.
don't he want to hang out with me? Why don't he want to be around me? Why don't he want to sleep with me? Why don't he want to talk to me? He hang out with everybody else. He talked to everybody else. What's wrong with me? And so I think that that is one of those things that lead us to a feeling of shame and not even admitting that. But the truth is that, like you were saying, is that it starts out as understanding, but I think understanding becomes justification. Now we're justifying the behavior. And when we start justifying behaviors, I think that causes us to avoid conversing about it, right? Because if it's justified, why we need to talk about it? Because we know that even if we bring it up, they just gonna avoid it. It's gonna turn into an argument, which those are truly ways to avoid the conversation. Is like, let me beat you to getting mad before, why you always asking me where I'm going, why you always asking me what I'm doing. But anyways, that's a whole nother story, right? But when we start justifying things, then we avoid talking about those things. And like you were saying, even in marriage, even in a marriage where we're not talking about, the inevitable is divorce. If you don't talk about things, right? If you really don't bring to the carpet these things that, are going on, like, the avoidance, you know every time you turn around, you're allowing them, they're going out to hang with their boys, they're going out to do this, they every day always working, umpteen hours, but the paycheck ain't up, the money ain't changing. They're doing all of these things, and you're justifying it. You always find yourself the one who explaining to everybody why they ain't there, why you showing up to the birthday party with you and the kids,
Yeah, you
why
be
you
lying. Now you
why
lying.
Why are you at the outings with just you and the kids? Like, when you find yourself doing those things, hello, you cannot keep doing those things and expect that it's going to get better. You really have to have that conversation, with your spouse, and sometimes those are not easy conversations because, you know, I think we avoid conversations because we don't want to talk about the truth of what's really going on. Like, we don't really want to talk about the truth of where they really are. We don't want to talk about the truth of what they're really doing. And so we avoid those conversations. But I'm telling you that those conversations are necessary because, you do not, again, want to end up in a relationship where you're the person that God designed and created you to be is now being torn down, and you're always questioning who you are, and you have no self-esteem, and you have no confidence in, who you are and who you can be. You do not want to find yourself, in a relationship like that. So, we are going to talk about this again because I really want to have that transparent conversation, because I know myself, and I know there are many women that know what it feels like, that are married, but you know um but are living single. I know what that was like. So, listen, I put the link on here for the book. You guys need to get the book. You guys need to understand that even if you don't want to talk to anybody else about it, at least get the book and read the signs and read where you know that, okay, yeah, we need to have a conversation about this, because I have learned how to justify and lie about what is happening and not face the reality of what is happening. Tiana, before we go, I want you to look and tell, a woman that is in the midst, that is in the middle, on the fence of, leaving, of, getting a divorce. What would you tell her when she has done everything that she can do, and she is on the fence about getting a divorce, but the situation is not improving, and she realizes that, it has destroyed, the fabric of who she really is, and she has kids that are being influenced by, this situation? What would you tell her?
Um, First and foremost, I'm going to tell you to pray about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Pray about everything. And although you feel like you're at your wits' end, that is the perfect opportunity for God to show up and show out. And it's
Mm.
not until He moves that you move.
Oh,
So if
that's
you don't
good.
hear him saying anything, if it appears as if he's ignoring you, don't you move until he moves. But
Mm.
when he moves, move with him. Don't move behind him. Don't move ahead of him. Move with God. And if you have children, I'm going to tell you this regardless, whether you're going through a divorce or not, pray over your children like you've never prayed before, because
Mm.
they're facing things that we've never had to face when we were their age. They're seeing influence from all angles that we never even had to even think about when we were their age. And I want to tell you that there's a life after a divorce, that
Mm.
the life you may know now will be different, right? But
Mm-hmm.
things, let me tell you, things can change. With God, things are possible. And though they may be different, that does not mean they're going to be worse. God is a
Mm.
God that doesn't replace, but He restores. So God will
Mm.
replace anything that you've lost, but He'll also restore you. He'll restore you to a whole place that you'll forget about all the things you lost. And it's not
Mm.
to say that you won't miss it. It's not to say that you won't have days where it's like, oh my God, I miss him or I miss her. But what it is to say is that you love yourself more now, that you're going to choose yourself. and you're not going to wait for somebody else to choose you. And the fact that they don't choose you does not mean you're not deserving of what you're asking for. It doesn't mean that you don't possess the characteristics that you need to possess. Sometimes people just don't have the want to. They don't even desire to see you the way you may want to be seen. But that does not
Mhm.
mean it doesn't exist. You may not be their favorite, but you're God's favorite. And you have to
Mhm.
know that whatever it is that God is allowing, whatever it is that He is allowing you to face or He's getting ready to bring you through, He gives sometimes the hardest storms to the toughest battles, to the toughest soldiers, to the toughest people. But let me tell you, with God, He will bring you through, He'll bring you out. And he'll give you an expected end, meaning that it will be better than what you even thought or imagined.
That is so good. That is such good advice. The Bible says, I know the plans I have for you. They are for good and not for evil, but to bring you to an expected end. Somebody asked a question: what does moving with God look like when you have been imprisoned by that life for some time?
Moving with God means you have to deny yourself, right? And sometimes that means unlearning habits, unlearning characteristics, unlearning let's just be real, religion. Cuz
Mm-hmm.
religion can keep you in bondage.
Mm-hmm.
Being spiritual keeps you with God. Being religious keeps you in bondage. And so you
Mm-hmm.
have to be willing to say, "Okay, God, take all of this off of me. Take the
Mm-hmm.
old off of
Mm-hmm.
me. Like, take it off of my mind, take it off of my heart, take the restrictions off of me, take the barriers off of me. Like, I want to know you in a deeper way. And if you
Mm-hmm.
seek him, you will find him." So that doesn't mean that it can't, I'm not saying it can't happen overnight, but just know this will be a continuous relationship. This will be a constant building. This is not something that you're going to experience one time and you're going to be like, "Okay, God, I had enough." No, it's God, literally. I need you to hold my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to really lead me through this. I need you to walk me through this thing because I get in the way sometimes. I want to
Yeah.
do it my way even now, but I need you to do this for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you have to be willing to let go of the unknown. Like,
Yeah.
whatever it is that you've been accustomed to, and adapt to the unknown. Because
Mm-hmm.
with God, you won't know everything. You're not going to
Absolutely.
know everything. He's not going to tell you the ins and outs of everything, because if he would, you wouldn't trust him.
Right.
So
and,
you
and
have
I
to.
think that is what you said. That is important. Moving with God looks like trusting Him with the unseen,
Mhm.
with the unknown. It looks
Mhm.
like trusting Him through the process. With your eyes closed and holding His hand and allowing Him to truly lead you and guide you through the process. Because I've never been this way before. I've never seen this before. I've never walked this road before. I don't know what it looks like, God. So I need someone who knows the plans that He has for me to lead me to those plans, to lead me through that path. And so, look, moving with God, like Tiana said, not before Him, not behind Him, but moving with Him means when I move, you move just like that. That is exactly what it is. And I think that sometimes that does become difficult because it does mean denying yourself. When everything in you wants to pull back, wants to resist moving forward, when everything within you wants to, there are times for let's just be practical, there are times when you just gonna want to lay there and just soak, right? And God said, no, you got to get up. You got to get up. We got to go. We got other stuff to do. Remember when Samuel was crying over Saul, and God was like, "No, get up. We got another king to anoint." There's times when God is going to tell you to do things that it may not feel good to you, but you trust God that it is good for you, right? And so I think that part of that is our own personal relationship with God, and nobody is responsible for that
But
but
also.
us.
Mhm.
Nobody's responsible for that but us. And I think that is one of the things one of the things that, and again, this starts a whole nother conversation, but we're not going to go there. But I will say this: one of the mistakes that we make is that we don't know God and the voice of God before we even get into marriage. So then when things are happening in the midst of marriage, now we got to decipher between what is God and what is our husband and what is people saying. And we got to decipher between all of the noise out there. And so that in itself can make things more difficult. But I'm telling you, God will meet you where you are. The Bible says that if you draw close to him, he will draw close to
Draw on
you.
you.
And so as you endeavor to hear his voice and to know, what it is that he desires, not my own selfish desires, but God, what do you want for me in the midst of this situation? That I'm telling you, he will show up and he will give you answers. And those answers may not always come from an audible voice that you hear, but those answers may just come from somebody that God sent to you, or they may just come from the word of God. You just reading the word of God, and God, that word will pop up off the page and begin to speak to you. This is my situation. So that is, when you take all those things into consideration, although you have been, entrapped in this situation for so long, when God begins to make himself known to you, that his voice begins to speak louder. His leading and guiding becomes stronger than all those things and all the other variables around you. And one of the ways is because God don't change. I don't care what's going on, his answer don't change. He don't change. So even when you resist it and you come back, he gonna be right there waiting for you to do the same thing that he told you to do before you resisted. So that's how you know that's God, because his answer did not change based on how you felt about his answer. Like, for real. He is real. I said this the other day. He is the prime example. We be saying, I said what I said. No, God is the prime example of I said what I said. It ain't changing what I say, because he been saying what he said for over 2,000 years and it still ain't changing. He said what he said and he ain't changing it. So that is how you know that it's God, because it ain't changed. And he ain't going to contradict what he says. Right? So Tiana, any final words, any last words for the women, for the men, whoever tunes in, even after this program ends live, anybody that tunes in, because I pray that this message goes forth and help those who are navigating through the complexities of divorce, because the reality is that sometimes divorce is inevitable. It is. Sometimes, I got married when I was 16, and I got divorced. I probably was like 20. Divorce was inevitable because we didn't know what the heck we was doing. We just listen to the voice of other people. There are times when it is inevitable, but there are ways to navigate through the complexities of marriage that will leave you in a non-destructive way, in a less um painful or hurtful way. There are ways to navigate through that. So any last words for those who are tuning in?
Two things. First thing being, a failed marriage does not mean you're a failed person.
That's good.
That doesn't your failed relationship does not identify you as a failed person. That's first
Mhm.
thing. Second thing is, don't be afraid to try it again.
Mm,
Learn everything that it is that God is teaching you and whatever it is that you're going through, and then you're going to apply it the second time around. And
mm.
it's okay. It's okay. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that it's not okay. But the second time around, don't allow the new person to suffer for what other people have done.
Oh, that's good.
Give them a fair shot. Give them a fair chance, and you go all in 100. Give it 100. I don't care that you went through a divorce, because I went through a divorce. But let me tell you, this time when God sent me whoever, baby, it's all gas, no brakes, because I refuse to go in half empty just
Yeah.
because somebody else mishandled me or fumbled me. That's not fair to them. That's not fair to them. So never be afraid to try it again. A bad
Mm,
experience does not make you a bad person. And even if you're the one that did some things, let's be honest, because everybody on this phone and on this meeting ain't 100. Y'all did some
right.
things,
Yes.
but God will forgive, and be okay
Mhm.
with that and forgive yourself. And if you're the one that had got left because you did some things, go and don't take those bad habits into something new. Be
That's good.
healed, be delivered. And if you're a woman, you want to go after a man that's okay with being by himself.
Mhm. Mhm.
A man that's
Mhm.
okay with being by himself and to himself won't feel the need to always be in something. I want a
Mhm.
man that got discipline. I want a man that,
Mhm.
even if we have an argument and we don't talk for a week, you better be at home by yourself. Because nowadays we have men that can't be by themselves. They
That's
don't
so
know how
true.
to function by themselves. I mean, they get out of one thing, 24 hours later, they in a whole nother situation.
Yes,
And so
yes,
you want to be able to identify. And the red flags you overlooked the first time, pay attention this time. Use caution, and it's okay to take your time. I heard somebody say the other day a slow burn. It's okay to have a slow burn relationship where you take your
hmm,
time to get to know somebody and you take your time to build it on a real foundation, a true foundation. I
yes,
mean, tell them the uglies, tell them the good, tell them the indifferences, tell them the not so cute parts about you. Because a
yes.
lot of times we allow social media to make us feel like we just got to jump in something in 7 days and be married. I mean, I'm not saying God can't do it, but this ain't your first rodeo, so you need to use a little wisdom.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. This has been so good. This has been so rich. Listen, if you know somebody who is, navigating through the complexities of marriage, who are on the fence about, a divorce, or navigating through the complexities of divorce, listen, share this with them, praying that they will gather information, the wisdom, the knowledge that is necessary to help them navigate through it without being destroyed. That is our desire, is to see women heal, whole, and healthy, and not entering into, relationships with anyone else until they have completely healed from what they've gone through, and not being destroyed by what they've gone through. So that is our desire. So I pray that this has been a blessing to you, and that you will share it with some other people that need this. Tiana, my twin,
I
thank
love
you. I love you so much.
you.
Girl, this
Thank
is
you
a
for
long
having
time coming. Oh,
me.
yes, yes,
Thank
yes, yes,
you.
yes. We're coming back to talk about married but single. I think I'm going to do a whole panel on it, because
Let's go.
listen, relationships, you know, are such a large part of who we are. They play such a large part of our lives, that if we don't deal with the different dynamics of these relationships, then again, like we talked about earlier, you will find yourself lost in that relationship. And we don't want to see people lost in relationship. I don't want to see women lost in relationship, lost in love. Those two things don't, that we say some of the crazy things that don't even make any sense. I'm be lost in love. But I think I want to do a panel about it. But girl, we're gonna talk about it because it
Let's
needs to be
go.
done. I love y'all so much.
I
Thank you for
love
tuning
you.
in. I love you, love you, love you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye bye.